Hello, everybody. I am Alanna Pearl, also known as your Fairy Godlawyer, and I am here today with a very special guest, a dear friend and colleague of mine, Christina Frey, and she is the founder and owner of Christina Frey Insurance Agency. And I have come out of my summer slowdown from social media to talk to you today about a really, really important topic. And it's not a topic that many of us really want to think about, or many of us maybe even think is important to us. But I just graduated from Elder Law College to learn about some of these issues. And the things that I learned were so starkingly, important and so shocking, really, that I felt that I really needed to get on here to start a conversation with my Facebook community about these issues so that you all can start thinking about them for yourselves and also for your family members, for your parents or your grandparents. And so what am I talking about here? So really what I'm talking about is the fact that anybody who plans to ever get old, and by the way, Christina, go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I just sort of started talking. So Christina, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your business and what you do, and then I'll get into
Sure, Alanna, yeah. First, Alanna, thank you so much for having me on your live feed. And everyone, good morning. I'm Christina Frey. My company is Christina Frey Insurance Agency, and I help people solve problems with solutions using insurance products. And Alanna and I have worked together over the last year or so, and we try to put our clients in the best situation possible so they can be proactive in responding to situations that arise in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christina is one of our most trusted referral partners. Anybody that I meet with that has an insurance need, I always refer them to Christina. She's just so knowledgeable, and we're so lucky to be able to refer you to our clients. So thank you, Christina. So let me get back into the topic of the day. And that is really for anybody who wants to be old someday. And the way we were describing it is that there's a difference between being an older and being an elder. And being an older, what that means to me is somebody who, is maybe turns out to be a burden on their family unintentionally, or doesn't feel like they have autonomy, or has lost their financial freedom. And a lot of times this happens from a failure to plan. And really what we're talking about specifically today is planning for your future needs and your healthcare needs in your elderly years. It may not actually end up being your elderly years, because any of us could need long-term care or assisted living care or in-home care at any point in our life. But for the most part, what we're talking about is in our elderly years, needing some type of long-term care from medical professionals. And what I learned in this training is that really 70% of people, so 7 out of 10 people, are ultimately going to require some type of long-term care in their life. Mm-hmm. And of those 70%, 7 out of 10 of them, so another 70%, will end up becoming impoverished because of the high costs of this care by failure to think ahead and plan ahead. And there's really 3 buckets that you might be able to draw from to pay for this care. So Christina's going to be telling us about one, which is in her domain, and then I'm going to be telling you about the other, which is in my domain. But the first domain is really your pocket, your own pocket. And I'm sure you educate people on this all the time, Christina. So can you tell us a little bit from your experience what you've seen as when people are private paying, what is the actual cost to the family on a monthly basis?
Absolutely. Obviously, we're here in San Diego, California, and currently the average cost of care in our area, if you should need to have nursing home type care, is averaging about $10,000 a month. And for private care in your home on a part-time basis, you could expect to pay between $6,000 to $8,000, depending on the level of care you're requiring in your home. So it's much more expensive than most people realize until they get to that point as well. My a lot of people who know me know my mom experienced a long-term care situation at a very young age. I was very shocked. I had already been doing insurance for quite some time, and never in my life did I ever think my own mother would be one of my first claims in my business. But when she was 56 and still working, she experienced a stroke, and it went unchecked. She didn't seek medical attention because I don't think anyone really realized it had occurred when her blood pressure shot through the roof. But she had basically a mild stroke, what many people would call TIA. And over the course of the next 3.5 years, she started to lose her memory. And, at first the doctors thought it might be menopause related or something else. So they ran her through the ringer of tests. For me, I knew from day one something was wrong upstairs. And but it took 3.5 years to diagnose her. And she, at 59 and a half, was officially diagnosed with frontal temporal aphasia dementia, which means it affected the frontal lobe of her brain, which controls your semantics, your behaviors, and of course, your memory. And it was tough. We cared for my mom in our home from the time she was 59 and a half till she passed away at 69 a few years ago. And if we had not had the long-term care insurance policy that I literally think my parents bought from me when they were 52 just to support my business. I remember my stepfather complained constantly about paying the premiums, and they were nothing compared to what premiums are today. But he would complain every quarter when he got his bill and kept wanting to cancel. I'm like, just keep it, when you're going to need it. And sure enough, my mom went into claim, like I said, at 59 and a half. And at first, we didn't need a lot of money for her care. So we kind of progressed through the stages. But without that policy, my parents would have been in a real bind financially. We had someone caring for my mom. We had arranged a fee and some room and board. And that brought down the cost a little bit. But we were averaging about $4,600 a month going out for just her care. Now, keep in mind, that was not including, the cost of supplies or medical equipment or anything else we had to do. And my mom's long-term care policy was helping to reimburse my father for those costs. Had they not had that, my parents, middle class, blue collar workers, they had their pension and small Social Security check. They would have had to sell off a second property that my grandpa had left to them. So it was amazing to see not just how the money helped our family, but also, more importantly, relieving the burden of care off of my dad. He was definitely grief-stricken and was having a hard time dealing with watching, his love of his life diminish. And the long-term care policy made it to where he didn't have to be there every day and watch this diminishing situation. He could go out and still have some sort of quality of life. So for me, that really kicked my career into high gear, because I thought, wow, I need to start getting this information out to people at younger ages. It used to be thought that you could wait till your 60s to buy this coverage, but that is not the case anymore in this day and age at all.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. And by the way, talk about life supporting you and your family. You had just gotten into this new career. I don't know that long-term care insurance was really as prevalent or known about at that time. And you're like, hey, parents, buy this policy, support my business. I'm like, okay, fine. And then it turns out being an incredible, really lifesaver for your family. I think, I was really, you mentioned to me last night that if you didn't have this policy for your family, your dad would be living a very, very different retirement right now, because they would have had no choice but to sell their assets and to use them for the cost of care. And so let's talk about, and you mentioned that, there's sort of this notion that you can wait to think about this until you're in your 60s. But let's talk about, people buying long-term care insurance at our age. And I'll say that, you and I have talked about me getting it for myself in the past. And I'll be really frank, I think we even started talking about this a year ago. And although there was this part of me that's like, yeah, it's important. I know. But it still just did not click as a priority. And I still have not purchased it yet, although after taking elder law college, I am ready to go for sure after seeing really clearly the dire consequences of not having a way to pay for your care in your older years. And a lot of people think, I think a lot of people think, well, I have family. They'll take care of me. I can move in with them. But I think the reality of that is that nobody plans to go to a nursing home. Nobody plans to need to have somebody come in and take care of them who's a skilled medical professional. Right. Maybe nobody, maybe a lot of people don't even plan to go to assisted living. But when you're in that situation, it's clear that the family, even if they want to, they may just not have the skill required to give you the care that you need potentially 24 hours a day. And so just relying on this belief that family is going to take care of me and I'll be okay, I think that's just very, very short-sighted. So let's talk about, the benefits of buying long-term care insurance at a younger age and why someone might want to, who's in their 30s or 40s, why they might want to invest in this type of insurance now rather than waiting until they're much older.
Yeah, Alanna, before I go into that, I want to touch on something you said a little while ago when you mentioned, even yourself, not taking out your long-term care. And there's this feeling of, that this is something that's not going to happen to me till later. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings I find with long-term care is people, when they think of long-term care, they think of conditions that are going to happen much later in life. They think of Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, or strokes. And the reality is that 40% of the people actually needing long-term care today are under the age of 65. And do you know why that might be?
Because it could be from anything. It could be from an accident. It could be any type of illness that requires long-term care.
You nailed it. It's from accidents. And USA Today put out a report that 40% of the people who are needing care was due to accidents. And, if you think for yourself for a moment, if you suddenly had an accident or illness today, what is important for you to protect? Or what is important for you to have if you're needing care? And, to get to your question as to when people should be buying this coverage, I've always encouraged people that they should really be looking at this coverage when they're in good health and they can afford it. And the reason being is because you never know when your health's going to change. More and more, we're seeing in our nation conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure. And these are conditions that can cause a potential declination for you to secure this coverage. And then you're
getting denied. You're denied. Just not going to get it.
Denied. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's shocking for some folks, when they apply in their 40s and they find out they can't even get the coverage because they've already had too many health issues or health issues that are not being controlled that will allow them to secure this important coverage. So as a rule of thumb, having some coverage is always better than none. And what I'm finding with my younger folks today is they're more and more savvy. We're seeing now, you mentioned, when I first started my career, you were right. There wasn't a lot of awareness out about long-term care. I would talk to people about long-term, like, what's long-term care? I'd have to explain first what it is. In this day and age, that is not the case anymore. People do know what long-term care is. And the reason is because they've usually known someone that's needed some type of care, whether a loved one, a friend, or, an acquaintance, or they've even been a caregiver themselves, or maybe they're even a caregiver right now, and they're experiencing those burdens of caring for a loved one. And I myself and my sisters are what they call the sandwich generation right now, because we have parents who are beginning to need care while also having children, we're trying to raise, or our own careers and responsibilities we're trying to get going so that we can retire, but we're being sandwiched with having to care for, ourselves or our children and also our parents. And so the awareness is there, and I'm getting more and more people who are asking me at younger ages, how do I secure my long-term care? How do I take care of this now? And I think that's a great thing, because the younger you can secure this coverage, the lower your premiums are going to be. You have, most people don't realize that with long-term care insurance, we have preferred rates and we have standard rates. And if you're in great health, like someone like yourself, Alanna, you can get preferred rates, which over the years, I mean, that's going to save you 20 to 30% alone in a premium for someone who would get standard rates.
And my understanding is that, if I buy this now when I'm young and healthy, I can actually, and while I'm making money, it probably in my best earning years, I can pay it off over the next 10, 20 years. And, unless God forbid I go into claim mode where I will immediately start benefiting from it. But otherwise I can pay it off in 20 years and then be done. And I have the peace of mind knowing that if I need care, I have that insurance available to pay for it. Is that right?
That is correct. And that's one thing, that I'm excited about. Over the last, I would say 10 to 12 years, we've had several new products enter the long-term care market, which really were designed to help the younger adult get their protection in place sooner. And now we have options like 10 pay, 20 pay, or paid up at 65, which that's very popular with, my 40-year-olds. Because you can make these accelerated payments on your long-term care while you have your largest earning power during your career, which is typically in your 30s and 40s, to buy this coverage and be paid up at 65, where you don't make another premium payment, but you still have all your benefits for when you need them. And you're correct. If you go into claim prior to that, something like an accident should have happened or a chronic illness, then you can activate your plan. And these plans, a lot of people don't realize, is when you're receiving benefits, you don't pay your premium anymore. Your premium gets waived. So the premiums stop and you start receiving. And more importantly, these benefits are tax exempt. You're not going to pay taxes on them as you would if you have to draw from, investments or
retirement accounts. Yeah.
Yeah, or if you had to sell a second property and got hit with capital gains, people don't realize the long-term care insurance gives you that tax exemption, which is huge when it comes time for payout.
And also, I think in some instances, you may even be able to deduct it as a business expense as well. And so I'm actually curious. It looks like we've got about 10 people live with us here. And I think we can see your comments. We're using StreamYard to stream to a couple different pages. So I'm curious as to anybody watching, if you've experienced having a family member that required long-term care, and whether that, whether they had long-term care insurance or whether they were in a situation where they were looking at spending down all their assets and being in private pay. And while we're waiting for, if anybody wants to post a comment on that, I want to switch gears and talk about the situation when somebody has not thought ahead, hasn't planned ahead. They either didn't, they're no longer eligible for long-term care insurance, or the cost of it is going to be just extremely prohibitive. And that's why Christina and I are really such a great team in this, because it depends on what stage you are in life or what stage your parent is in life, or even grandparent. I would say, my opinion is the best possible outcome is that you have a long-term care insurance policy and you can use those funds to pay for your care, whatever they may be. But that just may not be possible for many people. And I know, Christina, you come across a lot of people that's not an option anymore. And what those people are really looking at is either spending down all their assets on the cost of care. And remember, this is an average of $10,000 per month. So you can imagine that the average family is going to spend up all of their life savings pretty quickly in that situation, or becoming eligible for government aid to help pay for the costs of care. Now, most people don't realize, or many people don't realize, I think more and more people are realizing, is that Medicare is not going to pay for this. Medicare does not pay. And the only way to have the government pay for this type of care is, unfortunately, if you're poor, or in another way to say it is if you're poor on paper. And this is a problem with the system, and that's a much larger problem than, I'm really going to talk about today, that we sort of leave our elderly people in the lurch when it comes to paying for their care. But we have to work with the system we have. And luckily, that's where attorneys like I can come in, especially with all these new tools that I learned in elder law college. And I can help people who are looking at the possibility of having to spend their entire life savings and become impoverished, because you cannot become eligible for Medi-Cal, which is the government program that pays for this type of long-term care, unless you have no more than $2,000 of assets, literally $2,000. And I want to talk a minute about Medi-Cal, and maybe you could speak to this too with your experience, Christina, of understanding, the nursing homes system here in California. A lot of people think that, well, Medi-Cal, that means, totally crap care. I'm going to be in like the worst nursing home in California, or I'm going to get like the worst possible medical care. But whether or not the Medi-Cal health insurance system is a good one, I'm really not aware of whether or not it is. But we're talking about something completely different. And you can actually go to, we were told, the Rolls Royce of nursing homes or assisted care, facilities, having Medi-Cal pay the bill, because they can't discriminate against people based on whether or not they're private pay or whether or not they're Medi-Cal. Now, I know there's some nuances in that, and you might have to, again, sort of work the system, even though they can't discriminate in practice. There may be some things you can do to get yourself, it lined up to have to be in a better facility. But I just want to address that concern, first of all, that we're not talking about like the worst care. We're talking about really high quality care. And so, that's where I come in, is putting your family in a position for being eligible for Medi-Cal to pay for this cost. And I did want to just get your opinion on that, Christina, that, if you're on Medi-Cal, you're still going to get good care. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, so obviously, the nursing homes that accept Medi-Cal or Medicaid in other states are all regulated by the same standards as, a facility that maybe doesn't accept Medi-Cal. And basically what happens is, let's say you want to go to the St. Regis of, nursing homes. If
Right.
you're on Medi-Cal from the get-go, no, they're not going to take you, because they only accept private pay, which would be your own money or insurance. And you usually have to, almost like, applying for credit, you have to show you can pay for a period of usually 3 to 5 years out of your own pocket. However, if you enter one of those wonderful facilities and during the time you're there, you do exhaust your financial means, or maybe even your long-term care coverage if you didn't buy enough or you couldn't afford to buy enough, they cannot kick you out once you fall onto Medi-Cal or Medicaid. And so a lot of folks, often when they look at the long-term care insurance, if all they can afford is a smaller policy, they figure, okay, at least I've got some time to get me into the place I want to be and get qualified. And then if I do end up, falling onto medical welfare, then I won't be kicked out. They cannot kick you out once you're in.
Right,
okay? Exactly. So that's the main condition. Yeah. And so you gotta, for instance, like if you want to go to, for a while we tried my mom in an assisted living facility in Rancho Bernardo. And right now we're just talking about nursing homes. We haven't talked about, residential care facilities or boarding homes or other types of care. But if you wanted to go into a private nursing home, like up in Rancho Bernardo or Casa de Mañana in La Jolla, you would have to show that you could pay for a period of time. And if you can, then they let you in. Assuming there's not a waiting list, some of these places do, but they definitely cannot kick you out once you fall onto welfare.
Right. So I want to talk about that a little bit and really highlight the fact that what this really comes down to is having a plan and a strategy. Because if you just have no plan and no strategy, what will happen is you will spend all your assets. But if you work with someone like Christina and me together to come up with a plan, say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We might buy a little bit of long-term care insurance to give you some time. And then while you're in claim mode on your insurance, we're going to do some planning with your assets to make it so that we're going to either, spend them on things that you need anyway, or convert them from non-exempt assets for purposes of determining whether or not you are eligible for Medi-Cal into exempt assets. We might do some gifting strategies where, although you've gifted your assets, you still have control over them in some way. And there's actually many, many strategies and tools in my tool belt that I can use now that I've learned about them to help people to not become impoverished, to not lose all their assets, to be able to have access to them while still on paper qualifying for Medi-Cal. And so maybe you do go in and you private pay for a little bit of time. And while you're on private pay, you're planning with a lawyer, you're planning with Christina to try and figure out the best strategy. And it's really case by case specific. Everybody's situation is different. Nobody's strategy is going to be the same. And that's why you really need to work with qualified experts who can help you come up with the best possible strategy for your family to keep as much of your money in your hands or in your family's hands while still getting the care that you want and having it paid for by Medi-Cal as much as possible. So there's a couple comments here that I just wanted to bring up. And Anne, I know you had told us yesterday, and I'm so sorry to hear this, that you know your grandparents are privately paying for their nursing home care right now. And thank you for sharing that so that other people can have that awareness. I know that Anne had said that her grandparents are paying $14,000 a month on private pay. And like I said, Anne, I'd love to talk to you and your family to see if there is anything that possibly can be done to help relieve that burden. And Kelly said, I only wish that my parents had it now, as we are living it currently with my father's declining health. I wonder if I could put this up on the screen. Yep, there we go. I only wish my parents had it now, as we are living it currently with my father's declining health. The stress on my mother is painful to watch. It's going to be expensive for them without long-term care. And Kelly, again, it sounds like your family might be in the situation where long-term care insurance is no longer an option. But maybe there is some planning that can be done. And in fact, there probably is some planning that can be done to help alleviate the financial burden. And you'd be surprised that, the tools that are in the elder law attorney's tool belt to help to both get the benefits and the care that you need and to keep the money in the family. And so Kelly, I'd love to talk to you about that. I'd love to see whether or not we can come up with a strategy to help your family. And Marcy says that my mom could have benefited from this type of coverage when my dad was diagnosed with colon cancer many years ago. Yeah, absolutely, Marcy. And I'm curious as to whether or not, your dad was able to get the care that he needed and whether or not that was a big financial burden on your family or not. And let's see, Donovan, so many people have their own stories of this. It's just, it's so common. It's so much more common than I think we realize. My mother had a stroke when I was 21, when I was 21, and developed Parkinson's. I'm so sorry to hear that, Donovan. My siblings and I have been taking care of her for years. I can tell you firsthand, the medical system is a lifesaver, but there are limitations in terms of care. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point is that we don't have a perfect system, and we have to work with the one we have. And there are things you can do. Maybe it's not going to make it so that, it's absolutely perfect and everything's sunshine and rainbows, but you can alleviate the burden. You can get help. You can come up with strategies for the family so that it's not devastating, so that it's not dire, so that you can get out of crisis mode.
Absolutely.
And yeah, for sure. So I think that's probably about it. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about today, Christina?
Yeah, I wanted to just say, first, I wanted to thank everyone who was joining on the call and sharing their stories with us. I can't tell you how thrilled I am, Alanna, that you are going to be working this area of business with your law firm, because for myself as a long-term care planning specialist, we're always trying to find strategies to help people avoid the devastation of spend down of their life savings. And it's very hard to find attorneys like yourself that specialize in this niche. So I want to encourage the people on the feed who have someone in a crisis situation now, where obviously they don't have their long-term care insurance and they're in spend down already, to reach out to you to look at some of the options that you can share with them. And then also, more importantly, for those of you who, are witnessing this, as well with your parents and family, I would encourage you, if you want to start the planning for yourself, to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to start your long-term care conversation and see if having the insurance would make sense for you at this time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, Katrina just asked how people can contact you about discussing a long-term care policy. So we'll post Christina's information in the comment, but why don't you just let them know how to find you as well, Christina?
Sure. Probably the easiest way to connect with me is you can go to my website, which is www.freyinsures.com, and Frey is spelled F like Friday, R-E-Y, insures, INSURES.com. And you can fill out any of the interactive tools to request a quote or get in contact with me. Or certainly, you know, with Alanna on Facebook, you can find me there and all my information. But feel free to reach out to Alanna. She'll forward you my contact information. And for those of you who know me and want to get in contact with Alanna, give me a holler and I'll connect you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Christina. And I just want to say thank you for, you know, the recognition of sort of being willing to step out into this field. It is something that's new to me. It complements what I've already been doing with the estate planning and the business planning. It's really all about planning, really planning ahead of time to make sure that you're in control and somebody else isn't. And, you know, I'm new to it. I'm new to it. But what I will say is that I'm committed to helping people to get the care they need. And I am feeling more inspired than ever about, you know, what I'm doing and the service that I can offer to the community. And I will work with you and we will learn together, and I will do everything I can to make sure that your family is taken care of. So I do also encourage people, you know, if this is the situation that your family is facing, or even you just want to think about it for the future, get in touch with me. Reach out. You can find me on Facebook. Also, my website, consciouslegal.law. And if I can't help you, I will get you in touch with somebody who can. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here, Christina. I'm so grateful that we have you as a resource for our clients. And everybody, have a wonderful day. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.